Hello everybody, welcome back to another Age of Sigmar Warcry video. Today we're going to be list building for both Kruleboyz and for Darkoath Savagers. We're going to be looking at some of their units, we're going to be looking at their abilities, and trying to put that all together into some kind of functional list that you'll be able to use in your games of Warcry. Okay, so starting with Kruleboyz, they were my Group 4 winner in my Warcry popularity contest. It was quite surprising because Kruleboyz themselves have been quite contentious and they've divided the community somewhat in terms of their design. They seem to be very much a Marmite warband. You either love them or you hate them. So I was actually quite happy that they managed to win this because I really like the designs myself. I like my more outlandish and kind of weird, freaky proportioned orcs. So yeah, the design of Kruleboyz was really right up my street. The warband itself, Kruleboyz are basically characterized by their fighters, I feel. Their fighters come in two flavors, either extremely survivable chaff in the form of their gut rippers. Their gut rippers have 15 wounds and toughness 4, which is a lot when you consider they only cost 75 points, or extremely cheap chaff in the form of their pop grots and their stab grots. So it really allows you to run a versatile warband, and you'll have the points to fill in those extra fighters depending on how you want to build them. They have very useful doubles and triples, so you will really never be short on abilities for your dice to use. And also potentially very strong reaction in cunning traps. Now, cunning traps, effectively, if your opponent's fighter moves within 3 inches of one of your boys, you can use cunning traps, and that allows a friendly fighter within 3 inches to make an additional attack action on the fighter that made the move in. So what that allows you to do is use your potentially weaker gut rippers and your pop grots and all of that kind of thing, use their reactions when they get attacked to get your much stronger fighters, such as your killer bosses, to be able to do those extra attacks and potentially kill your opponent before they even start attacking you. Finally, they received a very strong boost from the introduction of Bladeborn back into the game. They have access to the Cunning Crew, and the Cunning Crew has 2 fighters with nets, and that effectively allows them to use nets in faction now, as opposed to having to ally in something like a Boggle Eye, which they would have had to do before, and use up one of those precious ally slots. Going into how I would build them myself, this is an example that kind of borrows from the idea of destruction soup that you see with other destruction warbands. I think it's, as a list, I think it's very versatile. It's got the Bolt Boy boss at 170 points, a killer boss with flail, an allied Brugit to be able to boost the attacks of both your killer boss and the brute boss with claw that we're going to be bringing, a bunch of gut rippers and shankers in there from the Cunning Crew to act as 1, a cheap fighter to be able to fill the points, and 2, use its net ability. Going through some of the options that I've chosen, we've got the Bolt Boy boss. Some people like it, some people don't. I quite like it for its aimed shots ability. It's only on a double, so it's not like it's using up triples or quads to be able to use. And what that does is it allows your Bolt Boy boss to crit on 4s with its next shooting action. It's got 3 shots with its crossbow. It's strength 4, but that doesn't matter when you're going to be critting on 4s. And it's importantly got 4 crit damage. Of those 3 shots, on average, you'll be critting 1 or 2 times. If you crit twice, that's 8 damage. It's enough to take down some weaker chaff fighters and really put a dent in any other fighter that you could look at on the board within 15 inches. And then it even does have another attack after that. So in reality, you're looking at something like 10 wounds coming out of the Bolt Boy boss if you put a double into it, which is a decent amount of damage considering it doesn't even have to be in combat to be able to do it. And then we've got both the killer boss and the brute boss. They get some very good damage potential with the Brugit. The killer boss has 5 attacks at strength 4. The brute boss has 4 attacks at strength 5. They both have a very good damage profile, and defensively they both have a bunch of wounds to them, so they're not easily going to be able to be one-shot. They provide 2 fighters that you can really use to anchor your lines and counterattack with your reaction if that's something that you want to do. Of course, the brute boss also has the Umessin ability, which has extremely good synergy with your gut rippers. So the Umessin ability means that fighters with 14 or less wounds don't count their numbers for objectives that you're nearby to. And of course, gut rippers have 15 wounds themselves. Unlike in, say, a goblin force where you'd want to use the brute boss, you still have the option to use Umessin when you're on top of a objective and still gain numbers from your gut rippers. Now, the list itself is missing a little bit of speed. So that brute boss can easily be swapped out for a number of different fighters depending on what you expect to face in an event or be tailored towards your local meta. Maybe you would want to bring a bounder boss if you do want more speed and you want some assassination capability, or it could be something like a Boggle-Eye and more Gut Rippers if you wanted more control. The Boggle-Eye has a range net, combine that with Shank's close range net, and it gives you the ability to lock down more fighters. Within Kruleboyz, there are a bunch of other fighters that you might want to build around. I quite like the Swamp Caller Shaman, simply because of its triple summon Boggy Mist. I'm always a fan of -1 attack bubble triples. There are a bunch of them sitting in Chaos, and Swamp Caller Shaman effectively has a copy of that. When you combo this with Gut Rippers, it makes for a very tanky core to your list. The Gut Rippers, as I said, do have 15 wounds and they have toughness 4. So once your opponent goes down from 4 to 3 attacks or from 3 to 2 attacks, it makes for a very difficult prospect for them to be able to actually chew through all of those wounds. Secondly, we've got kind of a meme. It uses stab grots and killer bosses. Killer bosses have a double, you hold them off. What you do is you pick a friendly fighter with both the Kruleboyz and the Bulwark rune mark within 3 inches of that killer boss, so basically only stab grots, and it allows that fighter to make a bonus move action or a bonus attack action. So if you stacked a bunch of stab grots and a bunch of killer bosses, you can get a whole lot of bonus moves and bonus attacks from your additional grots, and then the grots themselves, once people move in to fight them, they can use their reaction to make the killer bosses themselves attack. So yeah, it's a bit of a meme, but I think it's something that could be a bit of fun, allowing you to stack multiple bonus activations on top of each other. Going into our Group 9 winner, we have Darkoath Savagers. Darkoath Savagers, as a warband, they generally have pretty poor abilities. They have decent mid-range fighters though, and their hero, the Slaughterborn, is actually one of the better bespoke heroes in the game in terms of just its raw damage output. So it does have that going for them. Also, they do have an average movement of 4, so ideally you'd want to ally in something a little bit faster to go and get those objectives for you, or maybe something with utility abilities to kind of complement the just solid stats of your fighters. Some fighters of interest when you're trying to build for Darkoath Savagers. I've said before, you've got the Slaughterborn with Great Blade. It's very good for 180 points. Those 5 attacks at strength 5, it's a winning combination. You can generally rely on it to be able to put damage on the board where you need it to. I think the main downside of the Slaughterborn is actually the faction that it's in, because you can just ally into any of the other Chaos factions, and I think it would almost do better in those. But, you know, we're building for Darkoath today, so yeah, we're going to have Slaughterborn in our lists. Secondly, we've got the Godspeaker. It's 105 points. The Godspeaker is really the gimmick that you're supposed to be building your Darkoath Savagers around. It has a double whereby you can roll a number of dice equal to the value of the double, and any 5s or 6s will generate you additional wild dice. Of course, the main problem with this double is that effectively you're going to have to be spending a wild dice to get a high enough double. So you want double 5s and double 6s to net you the highest odds of generating more wild dice. And of course, you could high roll and you could generate 6 additional wild dice for the next turn. But really what you're doing is you're using 1 dice for the potential to generate 2 dice. And on top of that, you're using your double anyway for something that isn't an onslaught that could help you win the game further that way. You're trying to bank the dice that you have today in order to get more dice tomorrow. And the big issue is that, let's say you have your double 6 and you roll your 6 dice. On average, you're only going to be generating 2 additional wild dice. And the question is it really worth it? And in most cases, it isn't, because you're not going to be able to use those wild dice on the turn that you're using this ability. So the first turn that will really come into play is turn 2 when you allocate your wild dice from the previous turn. And any fighters that you would want to use those wild dice on would either have to have survived the first turn unscathed or be in the correct position to be able to use the dice that you generated. So it's a bit of a trap. I don't think the Godspeaker is necessarily a fighter you would want to build around. Sure, it's super fun and it's super funny when it does go off. If you wanted to build the list with the Godspeaker, I'd suggest something like a Mind Stealer, which is pretty fast, so it fills that niche for the warband anyway, and it has a variety of different abilities, with the quad the one that you would be wanting to save up your wild dice for. I did mention also that they have a number of mid-range fighters that are pretty good. These are the proven here, ranging from 115 up to 130 points, all with different kinds of weapons and different attack profiles depending on who you are fighting against. I quite like the Great Flail because I'm a sucker for 3-inch range damage, though if I had to choose one that you would probably want to bring in most situations, it'd be the Great Axe, because it is at strength 5, so it will be wounding most things on 3s, and it's got a 3-5 damage profile, which is very good in your games. Again, I think the problem with them is that they really just want more attacks to use, because once you boost that Great Axe to 4 attacks, or 5 attacks, maybe with another ability, it suddenly becomes extremely deadly for that 130 points that you're paying. The kind of list that I would build is probably something like this. I've got double Slaughterborn with Great Blade, because their damage potential is just huge. You've got the Darkoath War Queen, who, despite it being in her name that she is Darkoath, is not part of Darkoath, and she's part of Slaves to Darkness. But the good thing about the War Queen is that she has a triple, which gives +1 attack to all of your friendly fighters within 3 inches, which is very useful, both for her and for anyone who's around her. And who are we going to put around her? We're going to put Proven with Great Axes with their really big damage profile, and we're going to put Glory Seekers again with Great Axes. The Glory Seekers only have 2 attacks, which is why if you combo them with the War Queen, they go up to 3 attacks with a very good damage profile of their own. And of course, the very important thing about the Darkoath War Queen and her Spurned by the Dark Gods ability is that it works on all friendly fighters and not just visible fighters. So for your triple, you're effectively getting an onslaught plus an attack boost for everyone around you. So she'll go up to 6 attacks with that damage profile again. She'll start chopping through most mid-range fighters and even put a really big dent in some of the bigger fighters in the game. Do watch out with her though. She only has 20 wounds. They won't last forever. She does have toughness 5 to keep her around, but otherwise she's a little bit more fragile compared to some other fighters in her points bracket. And finally here, I've got what I call the maps special. We've got a local guy who plays up at Warhammer World in Nottingham. He loves his God Speaker. I think in one game he ended with something like 20 or so extra wild dice with it. So this is a list that I would bring if I had the ability to roll like he does. It's got the Slaughterborn with Great Blade, the Mind Stealer, the War Queen, so you can use both the Mind Stealer and the War Queen if you produce enough wild dice from the God Speaker, and the number of Glory Seekers with Great Axe to keep the numbers up. And that's it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much everybody for continuing to vote in my Warband competition. We will be carrying on. There's still 1 round of the initial heats to go. We'll see who wins that and what new lists I can put together for next week. And then we go into the quarterfinals and then the finals for the week after that, which will be pretty fun. A lot of people have been asking me if I'm going to do some 2nd and 3rd place warbands. Yes, I will. I'll get around to that interspersed between the summer and the autumn time. There are a number of warbands being released by Games Workshop in the autumn. So in between those, I'll do some more list building and we'll see where we can go from there. But in the meanwhile, that's it from me for today. As always, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think about the lists that I put forward. Let me know if you've got any cool lists for either Darkoath or Kruleboyz, if there are any fighters you think I'm overlooking, or if you've done well with them in any games recently. It'd be really interesting to hear about that, what you took and how you did. But yeah, that's it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.